You just remain standing. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I guess my first message, I'd like to wish everyone a happy spring. I think it's been about an hour and a half of spring so far. So far, so good. Next up, there'll be a public hearing scheduled for the 2023-2024 operating budget for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the Irvington Village Hall here at 85 Main Street. I'll make a motion if I can have a second for that. Second. All in favor? Aye. Talking about that down below as well. Next up is a check over $25,000. There was for LPR camera systems for the police, the license plate readers from Secure Watch 24 LLC out of the capital fund in the amount of $52,786.80. We had one piece of correspondence, which was from Commemorate. The Commemorate team is very appreciative of the work that Larry and the village committee is doing to create a memorial garden to remember the enslaved Africans who were reportedly buried in the vicinity of the strip of land bordering Barney Brook and South Buckout Street. We understand that there will be some time before the design and construction can begin due to the destruction and resulting instability from Hurricane Ida. Maybe propose in the meantime a temporary wooden sign, somewhat like the one installed next to our Ben Lincoln statue, be created and installed to mark this hallowed site. As you know, our committee will be engaging here in the community in a myriad of public tours and educational programming around the installation and unveiling of the Vinnie Bagwell sculpture this summer. Having signed the site, we can more easily enable visitors to locate the future site of the enslaved African burial memorial garden. Below is a sample text we believe would be appropriate for the sign. And then we have the sample text. You could also have a QR code. Alternative below is a sample text that meets the specific haiku-like parameters of a William E. Pomeroy Historic Marker. There's a sample there as well. Thank you for your work and consideration of the proposal, Sarah, and the Commemorate team. I think it's something that we can definitely consider since I don't even know if we have an engineering update on that area yet.
Well, I mean, we're still trying to narrow down the exact location, but we're getting close. It should still be in the vicinity of where we were talking about, but not exactly right there.
Okay, yeah, I just know we also need to make sure that's going to be stable.
The wall, yeah, that'll be worked on shortly, actually.
Next flood goes through. All the hard work for nothing. That's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the ask is a plaque,
Yeah.
right, while we wait for.
Exactly.
Because I think it'll be some time.
That makes sense. Trying to figure that out. Next up, public comment. Please do.
My name is David Rubin. My address is 55 Circle Drive. I was here last month discussing the rules about fencing and the enforcement of fencing rules and policy in the village. At that time, the mayor and Ed Marin said that they were going to meet in executive session, so I'm here to see if there's an update, and also to again state, and I sent an email earlier today, that I'm very disappointed with the way this has gone, and I don't know how I'm supposed to have this properly handled. I don't know if you want to comment or not, but I'm saying it again. As I said, I sent an email earlier today.
Sure. Yeah, I received your email. I did talk to Ed. He was going to get back to me on next steps, so I will follow up with him and we'll just try to respond to your email.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Please.
Hi, my name is Carlos Pedro. I wanted to come here today just to introduce myself. My family recently purchased 50 South Buckout, and want to try to incorporate myself into the community, get to know everybody. It's really no agenda item, just come and say hi, and hopefully we can find some sort of shared vision and work together to see if we can make the area better. So,
Yeah, so
I'm available anytime.
So it's the former Astor Buck, if you're wondering what that is. People don't know the number.
Yeah.
And Carlos, we're happy that you went ahead with it. I think it's one of the most interesting properties in Irvington.
Yeah.
Probably by a long shot. And I think your energy and your desire to make it great, I think will allow us to work together to accomplish that. So I think we're excited that I was very happy personally that it all happened and went through. So now it's I guess working with you on your vision for what you want. But,
Look forward to
we're
it.
happy that it all worked out.
Nice to meet you all.
Welcome to our
Thank you.
town.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carlos. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll move on to the consent agenda. Which is really one item, so I guess it's not really much of an agenda. Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If I can have a second. All in favor? Aye. Next is review of a preliminary application to West 67 North Broadway, Lawaro, for a special permit for adaptive reuse of a historical facility. Just I'll say welcome back.
Yes, absolutely. It's good to be here.
Do you remember the exact date you were here last?
The exact, I believe it was October of 2021, so it's been a bit of time.
What was different?
We see a few new faces too, so happy to see new faces on the board.
Before you get started, can we just do some housekeeping? You said that there's maybe someone in the audience here that I can promote.
Oh, yes, Christian Thompson
Yep.
from AKRF,
Okay.
and also Erica Seaborn.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary. All right, so for the record, Jennifer Gray from the law firm of Keenan Bean. I'm here representing Villa Luaro, LLC, the owner of 67 North Broadway. I have a team of folks with me tonight who I'll introduce. John Canning from Kinley Horn, our traffic and parking engineer. We also have Steve Tilley and Stephanie Reinhardt from Tilley Architecture. Christian Thompson is on Zoom along with Erica Seaborn. Christian Thompson is from AKRF. He's our noise consultant. We also have William James from the owner's representative is here with us this evening as well. I think I've got everybody. So we are here tonight to sort of resurrect our application for a special permit for Villa Luaro for adaptive reuse of the estate. This is pursuant to a section in your zoning code, section 224-8C, which does allow for the adaptive reuse of historic buildings in the IF20 district, or sorry, 1F20 district. If the building is located on the National Register of Historic Places or locally designated as a historic landmark, then your code says that it can be used as a historical, educational, and/or cultural facility. And that would include things like tours, meeting rooms, classrooms, exhibition and archival space, gift shop, kitchen facilities, and office space accessory to the cultural, historic, or educational use. And those are just a few of the items listed in your code. It's not an exhaustive list. I'm going to go through a little bit of the history of the site. I'm sure many or all of you are familiar with the history of the site, but for purposes of any folks listening at home, I'll just mention a bit about the history of Villa Luaro. Then we're going to go and give a brief description of what is exactly proposed at the site. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the application. And then I'm going to turn it over to John Canning to talk about traffic and parking, and then to Christian Thompson, who is with us via Zoom, to talk about the noise studies that we've performed. So, as I mentioned, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Madam C.J. Walker. I had the opportunity to review the video of your dedication ceremony for the plaza right out front here at Village Hall from the other week, and it was a very lovely event.
Probably
So
with the real block now, it's not plastic anymore. So
I did notice that. It looks very nice. So Villa Luaro is the former home of Madam C.J. Walker. She is the first self-made female millionaire in the United States as a woman of color. She made her fortune by developing and marketing a line of cosmetics and hair care products specifically for Black women through a business that she founded, the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. So she commissioned the work of Mr. Vertner Tandy, who happens to be one of, if not the first licensed Black architect in New York to design and build Villa Luaro. She moved into the home in 1918, unfortunately passed away about a year later, but the home remains in Irvington today to stand as a landmark. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1976. So the proposed use of Villa Luaro is to be the home of the Madam C.J. Walker Institute for Women of Color Entrepreneurs. This is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that's dedicated to educating, empowering, and uplifting women of color entrepreneurs. entrepreneurs. So there's a series of programming that the Institute has developed specifically to educate women of color with respect to business topics like financial literacy, business planning, marketing, community engagement, and other types of topics. There is a lot of information in the materials that we had submitted back in 2021. We didn't resubmit everything from 2021. We assume it's still in your records and in your files. If you would like us to resubmit, we can resubmit all of that material for your convenience. But there is a lot of information in there about the proposed use. So I'll just provide a brief overview rather than go through all of the details, but consistent with the provisions of the Village Code, there are a few key components to the proposed use. As I mentioned, the main component of the use is seminars, programs, workshops, educational programming for women of color entrepreneurs. That would be the bread and butter of the Institute and of the proposed use of Villa Lewaro. We also anticipate, as we have received requests in the past, to have private tours. There are many organizations. I think there was a Girl Scouts tour just recently. So organizations like the Girl Scouts, like the Boy Scouts, school programs that we would open up the doors for private tours. And then there's sort of the category of other events. These are things like fundraisers, other events that are geared to the charitable purpose of the Institute, larger programs. What we have done in the interim since 2021, since we were last before you, is we engaged with a traffic and parking engineer and a noise consultant to better understand, in response to some of the comments that we received from both the village board and the public, to better understand what those limitations might be as far as the scope of those events. And what we've proposed in the materials before you tonight is that no program or event would exceed 115 people, and this is based on the traffic and parking studies that were performed, as well as the noise studies. This would include both guests and staff. If there was ever a program that would exceed that amount, we agree that it would require further approval from the Board of Trustees. So there may be occasion, once or twice a year, where we get a request to have an event that might exceed 115 folks present on site. We would have to go through an additional process with you in order to allow that to happen. As far as parking goes, there is some parking available on site, as I'm sure you're aware. Per the parking study, and sorry, John, I'm going to steal a little bit of your thunder and give a brief overview, but you can fill in the details. But per the parking study, if we have an event that exceeds 30 people, then we would use off-site parking. There have been communications with the IPC and the ICC, as well as Mercy College up the road, to utilize their parking lots for off-site parking, and then a shuttle bus would provide transportation back and forth for anyone that doesn't want to walk the half block or whatever it might be from IPC and ICC. So all of that is covered in our traffic and parking study. Another key component is the timing of the programs and events. We understand that during school, beginning of school and end of school, as well as educational programs at IPC and ICC, there's a bit of a traffic crunch, let's call it. So we would specifically tailor our programming and events so that they don't begin or end during those peak periods. So we would only utilize the off-peak periods for the comings and goings for the programs and events. Now, as I mentioned before, we did initially file our application in 2021 in the summer. In the fall, we kind of took a step back after hearing some comments from the public and members of the board to further study the traffic, the parking, the noise, retained experts in those fields to further define the scope of the proposed use. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Canning to give a brief overview of the study that he performed and the results.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening. Good to see everybody. For the record, John Canning with Kimley Horn. So we did submit to you a parking study dated March 15th, in which we reviewed traffic volumes and traffic activity to ensure that the event traffic will not result in a significant traffic impact at the churches, at the schools, or to traffic flow along Broadway. In that study, we reviewed extensive traffic data on Broadway from 2008 through 2017 to account for COVID. We identified the busiest traffic volume activity by 15-minute period throughout the day, and the top 4 15-minute periods were almost in order from 7:45 to 8:45, so the morning is the biggest crunch. It's no surprise to me. I make sure I leave my house before 7:45 every day. Following that, the next busiest 15-minute period was 3 to 3:15, and then in the evening hour it was 5 to 5:15. We actually evaluated traffic operating conditions for the 5 to 5:15 peak 15-minute period and determined, as I'll describe, that we can manage traffic operating conditions and acceptable delays will be experienced during those hours. And what we've determined is from those hours down, the facility could have events up to 115 people without having any traffic impacts, but we've recommended for the busiest 15-minute periods of the day, and I'll go into it in a little more detail, that they shouldn't, because traffic is definitely very bad in the morning, and it's not great for a few minutes in the afternoon. It's not as bad in the afternoon. We did evaluate a 100-person event parking at either IPC or ICC. Villa Loiro's administration has indicated that Mercy College is most likely going to be used in the evening or on weekends when traffic volumes are lower. There's more than adequate parking at ICC and at IPC on most days to accommodate these activities, and also at Mercy College's annex in Tarrytown. We did recommend 7 measures which are enumerated toward the back of our report to ensure that traffic activity as proposed will not have a significant impact, and they are when there are fewer than 30 persons at an event, the event would be hosted at Villa Loiro, so there would be no need for shuttles or off-site parking. And when there are such events, the gates would be open so that people arriving would not back out into the street. For 100-person events, the administration would need to first of all coordinate with IPC and ICC or Mercy to make sure that there's nothing special going on at those institutions at those times. Secure sufficient parking, so make sure, for example, in the morning at IPC, when they have drop-off or pick-up, they can use a lot of their spaces, so you want to schedule afternoon events at IPC, you can do morning events at ICC. They contract for the use of a shuttle bus to shuttle motorists or guests back and forth. It's a short distance and many may walk, but for those who don't want to or if the weather is inclement. 100-person events should be scheduled not to start or finish at the beginning or the end of the school day at Irvington High School or Irvington Middle School. We put the current hours in our report. That'll probably stay the same, but if the hours change, the requirement is not at the start and the end of the school day. Similarly, for events scheduled at IPC, they should not start or finish at the start or finish of the day at Good Shepherd Early Learning Centre, and at ICC, events at that location should not start or finish at the end of the day for John Cardinal O'Connor School. So basically, you won't have event traffic mixing with school traffic. Then finally, for events at IPC where there are more than 60 attendees, we would recommend that a police officer be assigned or requested by the administration to direct traffic. The reason being that the IPC driveway is unsignalized and you could need some help getting out of there, just like on a Sunday morning there's a police officer that helps folks get out of the ICC parking lot. The ICC parking lot actually is fine really because you can go out via the traffic signal, so there's no need for police assistance. So with the implementation of these measures, I'm confident that events can be hosted by the Villa Loiro administration, the foundation, without any significant impacts. Basically what we're doing is we're avoiding the crunch times, and there's adequate capacity on the corridor at other times. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
John or Ms. Gray, I'm not sure. On page 2, you talk about private tours by appointment, and those you specifically say are scheduled between 9 and 3, but you specifically said all other events
Sure. So with respect to the private tours, again, if it's less than 30 people, we can accommodate everybody on site. So there would be no need to have off-site parking at
So
IPC.
any event that's under 30 people can be held between.
Exactly. That's, and John, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that is my understanding, yes. And if we need to update our materials, if there's a conflict there, we can certainly do that, but that, I hope that answers your question.
Sure, those numbers on the tour came from our special permit requirements before, the ones that we had imposed before, so they just put
Yes.
those numbers up.
Thank you, Mary Ann, for that reminder. Yes, for the Octagon House special permit that hosts tours, we tried to mimic the same conditions there. If there aren't any other questions on traffic, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Christian Thompson, who's,
Sorry.
oh, sure.
So there's mention
absolutely.
of the police officer being stationed at certain times if they're necessary. The cost for that would be paid for by who?
That would be paid for by Villa Luaro. Okay, so I'd like to turn it over to Christian Thompson from AKRF to summarize the acoustical analysis that was performed by AKRF. Hi, Christian.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. So just to give you a broad overview, we, as has been mentioned, we did a fairly comprehensive acoustical study with the intent of really drilling down and seeing exactly what could be accomplished at the Villa. So that was a multi-step process that included measuring the existing noise levels at the property and the surrounding area, predicting future noise levels with events using a sophisticated computer model with data for speakers, for crowd noise, for vehicle noise. This acoustical model allowed us to place these noise sources in the areas that they would need to be positioned. It let us put traffic on the roadways and allowed us to examine all of these different things to see if we would, what noise level increases we would be looking at. We also took a measurement. We measured an event that was occurring on the weekend at the Villa Luaro property so that we could try to line that up with what we were predicting. If what our computer model was predicting was wildly different, then we knew that we had to go back to the basics. So we also measured an event that was happening on site. So we measured noise levels for a total of 5 days. We measured starting on a Saturday, going to a Wednesday, so that we could get the weekend noise levels and the weekday noise levels, all times of the day, during the active morning and afternoon hours, into the evening hours when things get a little quieter, when things get a little bit more relaxing. People want to be able to enjoy their homes, enjoy their spaces. And we measured in one location, specifically on the property of Villa Luaro for that 5-day period. And then we also measured for a short period at different locations around the property so that we could see how the noise levels change throughout the property, all based on that one measurement that we had that was on the back balcony porch area. That went for a total of 5 days, and during that time we collected some traffic data while we were on site doing the shorter term noise measurements, and that led us to start programming our acoustical model. The acoustical model, as I mentioned earlier, has separate inputs to represent crowd noise. So we have published data to use for speech for the 115 people that are planned for an event. We have vehicle noise. We added the vehicles that were determined in the traffic schedule and the traffic report to Broadway and any other roadways that needed it. And we also included data that we've measured at previous projects to represent speakers, loudspeakers on the property during some kind of event. And so our acoustical computer model allowed us to accurately model all of those items and place even more receptors all throughout the neighborhood. So we had receptors where we actually did measurements along the property lines and in the general area of the property, but then we were also able to place additional receptors on all the surrounding residential houses so that we could not only predict what the existing noise levels are like at all the different properties, but also predict future noise levels with all these different noise sources operating simultaneously. We had investigated 3 different scenarios. The first scenario is an event that's mostly indoors inside the main house. Of course, we would expect that even with an event that's all indoors, you might have some people that are milling in and out or taking care of some things or stepping outside for some fresh air, so we included that as well. The second scenario is a completely outdoor event, 115 people outside plus 2 loudspeakers on that back balcony porch area. And then also a third scenario with an event taking place at the carriage house with about half the people inside, half the people outside, and no loudspeakers. And as I mentioned earlier, all 3 scenarios that we investigated included the additional cars and buses that were predicted and discussed in the traffic study. So we did all of that. We did all that analysis and predicted that the maximum predicted increase in noise levels at the property lines was approximately 6 decibels, and that the maximum predicted noise level at the nearest residential properties, at the actual residential homes, was about 4 decibels. Those numbers are important because the Village of Irvington noise code doesn't provide us with concrete numbers in terms of what is allowable and what is not. I'm just pulling up my report really quickly to reference the correct language, but it basically says that it is unlawful for any person to make any noise which reasonably either annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others. So with a noise level increase of 4 decibels at residential homes and a noise level increase of 6 decibels at the property lines, noise level increases of that amount, 4 to 6 decibels, are certainly noticeable. We disclose that in our report as being readily noticeable. That's how most people would perceive those noise level increases. But that's also below the state DEC criteria for what they would consider a noise level impact. They would consider a noise level impact being an increase of more than 6 decibels. And so we're predicting noise levels that are 6 decibels at the property line, 4 decibels at residential homes. And so that would all be readily noticeable, but we do not believe that it would reasonably annoy, disturb, injure, or endanger the surrounding neighbors. That is the broad overview of the acoustical studies that we performed and the calculations that we did. And so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
What was the volume you assumed from the loudspeakers in the study? In other words, there had to be an assumption you made in your model, right, as to what the volume would be of the speakers?
Yes, absolutely. Great question, and thank you for bringing that up. We assumed a noise level of approximately the low 70s dBA. That's measured at a distance from about 5 feet away from the speakers. And the acoustical computer model assumed that those speakers could be pointed in any direction. So it's basically an omnidirectional source, so that we could really look at, well, let's not quibble over whether the speaker is pointed in one direction. The speaker could be pointed in any direction, and so we can predict it that way. That's in line with the Institute's desire to have general background ambient music at their events.
So I guess what I'm thinking, some experience with performances, music, film shoots, things like that. It's always well and good until somebody gets a hold of the speaker who doesn't have responsibility. So I guess my question would be, would there always be oversight at these events to ensure that the standards that were in the study are maintained during the event?
I think we would have to make sure that that is the case, yes, in order to stay within the confines of the village code requirements. Thank you, Christian. Thank you. So we're happy to answer any other questions that you may have. We're happy for this opportunity to come back before you and sort of reintroduce the project to some of you and introduce the project to others. And we would ask if the board is ready at this time. I think our next step would be to schedule a sort of second public hearing. We had a public hearing back in 2021. Obviously, it's been some time. We have new information. So we would hope that the board is ready to take that step and start hearing from members of the public.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. I have a couple of things. First is a completely unrelated item. Well, it's quasi-related. Not to your application, but a resident had told me that he had a student, I'm not sure where the student was, Worthington or somewhere else, that brought to his attention that the historical marker was kind of deteriorated. I assume that New York State, like their roads, like we'll get in trouble if we fill up potholes. I assume if we touch their marker, then something bad would happen, like we'd go to jail forever. Turns out that, actually I just heard this afternoon that the money ran out for those in like the 1960s. So
Oh my gosh.
they've actually turned it over to local authorities now.
Okay.
So we actually are free to maintain it and fix it up. They have a pretty good website that our local legislator sent to me that actually has the exact colors to use. It's actually Rust-Oleum, which is kind of funny to me, but they have the actual numbers, like whatever blue, whatever yellow. So to me, the coordination is really asking if it's okay if we can figure out the best way to fix that marker up, because it does look like it's rusty and things. So if we could have your permission to do that, I'll task Larry with figuring it out. 'Cause I don't think it's not going to be that much work for you guys. I think it's some steel brush and some paint, but that's completely unrelated. But not really to this discussion, but I wanted to bring it up before I forgot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Happy to coordinate that.
All right,
Yeah.
great. So we'll reach out on that. I think the other kind of historical piece of information that kind of hung over the discussion a couple years ago was the fashion show, which I think there was a polarizing kind of take that it was either the greatest thing that's ever happened to Irvington, or it was so ridiculous that we can't believe that everyone's still on this board of trustees because they let this happen to us.
Most of us are.
Yeah, it's true. There's one of us left. So it's obviously the other three's fault. But it was a special event. But I think that's why I think, if let me know if you disagree, but I felt like the purpose of the purpose of the special permit was not in question. Like, I think everyone thinks this is great. I think the uses were all great. It wasn't really until we got to the other events where it kind of got a little tricky. It was like, yes, definitely. Now let's talk about this. And I think where we landed was, I think we said 100 people. 115 is probably a rounding error from there, especially if you include staff. And then kind of further approval potentially. And I think maybe we didn't get the further approval part for the first year. I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. But again, it was traffic, it was noise, it was parking. Most of those items, I think you have a pretty significant update on. Obviously, we've talked about it a lot. You heard what everybody said last time. There was probably a group, and Larry and I were talking about make sure to reach out to the people for the public hearing to make sure they're all here. But I think with more information, hopefully we can get this across the finish line this time. And I think we were fairly close last time, even if it was kind of a little bit of a meet in the middle between the neighbors that didn't want anything and then you guys kind of wanted carte blanche to have any kind of events. I'm confident we can figure something out. I think it is great to have a public hearing or two in the near future. I do feel like there's new momentum again with the Madam Walker Plaza. We're gonna have a great new sign now. We have the sign here, we have the sign in front of the house now.
mean, the next meeting is April 12th. As you said, there's a budget public hearing that night. The meeting after that is April 17th. That may be a logical.
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense.
I mean, the budget public hearing may spill over into the 17th, which is, yeah, it can, yeah. But it doesn't mean that nothing else can be done on the meeting. It's just,
Yeah.
trying to.
And it is usually pretty rare that we get that. I mean, this year's a little tougher budget.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
17th, would make sense for me, if that works for you guys.
Is there, what would be the date after the 17th?
May 1st.
I have to look at my calendar. It's whatever the first.
As we call it here in Russia.
I am away on the 17th was the only complicating factor there.
May 1st will have better weather.
Maybe.
That is true.
Maybe.
All right, if we could
Yeah, so
do
we
May
get back,
1st,
yeah, but
that
yeah, so
that would be
we
great.
can Put that in tentatively now. You guys can confirm that it works.
That would be
I have a
wonderful.
question.
Sure.
For just in anticipation of hearing and what I heard at the live, I mean, I listen to all those meetings as a resident. So in terms of the kinds of events that are gonna happen, like what types of events are you guys thinking? And then I would also just think like, in terms of the events that have music, which are fine, you know, in the grand scheme of things. Would those be weekends? You know, sometimes like fundraisers are like on a Thursday night or a Tuesday night, which I think even for what I remember hearing, you know, people have issues with things like it, or that's okay, you can kind of get them if not.
Sure.
But just days of the week, I think, what we're
Yeah, so I mean, most of the events would, I mean, if you think about, I think about CLE, continuing legal education events, where you go and you listen to a speaker, maybe there's an interactive workshop portion of it. That's going to be sort of the bread and butter type of programming and events that are happening at Villa Luaro. For the occasional fundraiser and events during the evening that might have music, we do have in the materials that no event Sunday through Thursday would end after 9 o'clock. So by 9 o'clock, all the events or programs would end. And at 8 o'clock, there would be no amplification of sound or music. So we did put time limitations on that, especially for Sunday through Thursday when, folks have school, work, etc. For Friday and Saturday, that was extended to 10 p.m. for both the amplification of sound and for the event end or program end. So we tried to be mindful of those comments that we did hear from members of the public.
Well, those were
concerning
also
about-
the conditions that were, what had happened last time, we'll go through this later, is we had some special permit conditions, and they were sent to them, and those were the conditions that this board had agreed on, and the days and the times that this board had agreed on, and then they were incorporated into their suggested special permit conditions.
And I mean, if those aren't mine, right, just, I think it, the resident has a party at their house. So, right. So it's not, I just want to point out that it's not like outside of the
In fact, the pictures you submitted with people out on the patio, that doesn't have to be all the water, that can be any sort of activity, so
Exactly.
kind of want to stay with it.
Yeah, I mean, we want this to be successful. We want to work with the community to make sure that it's a success for the Institute, but also a success for everybody in the neighborhood as well, and that everybody's proud to live next door to Villa Luaro. Yes.
Okay. Let's see, May 1st works for
All right.
Great.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Enough time to get to the airport?
Yes.
All right, next up is review of the 2023-2024 tentative operating budget.
That's way to cut more.
I think we're good.
Or within
With an extra, yes.
Right, I'm not sure.
You guys always have
how much that's
surpluses.
gonna
We
help
should-
next year.
I should have known you. It's an
Yeah, exactly. Use it all next year. That'll be my gift to you.
And if you're really OCD, I guess we're gonna have to cut it, but we should be okay. Anyway, so.
$7 back.
Yeah, exactly. So, just to introduce this, and Katie will obviously take over here, but the tentative budget was filed today. The tentative budget is up on the village website. There's a news story there that people can click on to download it. And the public hearing is now scheduled for April 12th, where we will, again, kind of do a quick overview of the budget and then hear any comments that you may have from residents and others. So with that, I'll have Katie run through some of the changes that make this up, not just the changes from our last work session, but just in general, what makes up the budget this time around.
Yeah, so on this handout, this one-page document that everyone has, I've highlighted the big items that contributed to the tax levy increase. So we have salary increases of about $318,000, a health insurance increase of about $369,000, debt increase of $308,000, retirement increase of $100,700, the utilities increase of about $52,000, general liability insurance increase of about $37,000, some IT security related upgrades for $36,700. To offset some of this, we have increased building permit revenues for $180,000, sales tax revenue for $150,000, interest and earnings revenue for $85,000. Then in here I have some of the main departments requests. So we have the additional police officer and detective promotion, which was extended 6 months later than the original request. So that results in an increase in the tax levy of $49,000. And then
And there also is a subsequent year increase of 160 total, but the increase beyond that, it's about 111.
Yes, yep. And then the sergeant promotion for $3,500, which is the cost of the promotion offset by the elimination of the out of title pay. And then in Parks and Rec, we have the addition of the part-time groundskeeper, 28,000 requests, which we're going to look at as a one-time request to offset with the use of surplus. And then we had, that's for the retirement, that was 13,000. And then there were also part-time staffing reductions of about 25,000, the concert and movie elimination of 18,500, and then fireworks we reduced from 30,000 to 15,000, with the anticipation to fundraise for the remaining 15,000. And the library requests, we have the principal library clerk request for 14,000, offset by the use of fund balance for 14,000. Then there's also the part-time clerk increase for 8,520, which we reduced by 5,000 from the original request. And there's also other increases such as utilities and maintenance costs of 16,500. Then we have the DPW staffing savings from retirements, which gives us a savings of about 59,000. We are going to use an additional appropriated fund balance of 23,000 to kind of balance the budget, and then other miscellaneous expense increases were about 27,525. So that gets us an extra $407 to be in compliance with the tax cap.
And that results in a tax rate decrease of 1.6%. But the assessment roll had increased, which I think we talked about at the last
like 09, the reason FACE was actually created, which was actually fundraising and community events, was basically to fund the fireworks. 'Cause during the kind of great financial crisis, spending $30,000 to put things up for 20 minutes seemed really absurd.
But probably satisfying. Gave some satisfaction.
It's definitely a great night for sure. So that's why we created that, and we kind of came up with the idea of having events to raise money for other events. And we had the Penguin Plunge, which raised about $60,000 the first year, paid for fireworks and other things. And then we had our Oktoberfest, which traditionally made between say 10 and 15,000 potentially. This year it did not, because we actually had fireworks various. So
Like Beetlejuice, we said your name and you
Yeah.
appeared.
it's kind of like the history that I was just going over the history of FACE and why we had it, and pledging my my patronage to raise the money for fireworks. So, because I don't know if you saw the latest budget, but we cut half of the fireworks budget,
Joe's ISIS got that.
$15,000. But I pledged to raise that so we can replace it. That's I was going over the history of it. And welcome, Jeff.
Yeah.
Looking at my friends.
Hey, listen,
It did come in kind of hot.
it's, yeah.
It was late this afternoon, so, and we have till April to talk about it.
Yeah.
But, I was saying I'm pretty confident that we can find the rest of that money to make it up. I don't know if there's any other items on here anybody wanted to highlight or talk about. Obviously the big one is cutting the police, or not cutting, but, pushing back, deferring the police hire, till January. Is that how it works?
Yes.
So it's about half a year's savings. Hopefully next year's rosy budget. You guys don't have to worry about it. I'll be sitting in my retirement home. On Riverview Road, paying lots of taxes and yelling at you guys. So I think that was probably the biggest dollar decrease since the other budget. I do think it's important to get below the tax cap. I mean, obviously we don't have to, but I think it's a message that we've always sent. It's never been disclosed before, but I think that's part of the discipline of it is, we want to keep things tight, and it forces us to make tough decisions. And, I think none of the cuts we made, whether it was cutting, some of the library, increases, cutting the police requests, like there weren't any frivolous requests, or we would have, kind of dismissed them out of hand. They were all legitimate requests that we entertained, and we tried to, address them as best we could. So hopefully we'll be able to get some more of the library programming. We'll be able to start to work on some of the backlog in the police department. I think the other item in the police department we didn't have are the dash cams. Kind of disappointing, but perhaps we can maybe find a grant for this year, and then think about putting it for next year. But again, that also leads to more time for the detective division. So maybe we don't get the grants right away, but I feel like we weighed each of those things pretty carefully, and didn't just cut them lightly just to cut. It's never fun to cut things for sure. But again, the fact that it looks like we have a 1.6% tax decrease is great. It's a nice headline for me to write out on. But the truth is our assessments went up so much, which is even more of a double whammy as we talked about last time, because my guess is that it didn't go up as much in other Greenberg municipalities, so we'll be paying a little more in the county, a little more in the town, and now the 1.6% decrease is really the 5% increase, something percent increase. So it's not easy. I mean, it is below the inflation rate, which has always been my goal. So I feel like that I'm happy with this budget. It wasn't easy. We didn't have kind of no surprise. The sales tax was much better than we thought. Or I think our fund balance is still healthy. We're using some more. I think we are still getting some more COVID money, right, Larry? That is kind of
We already got our second tranche.
we did. So I think we're still in good shape. I think we're in good shape knowing that we're looking at potentially a large haven't seen in decades, that scale and that magnitude. So, you know, I think it was responsible just to come in and, you know, with a higher budget this year. So, all that said, you know, I thank Larry and Katie. You know, it's great. I think Brenda left on purpose.
We did chuckle about that a bit.
Yeah. Did you hear from Brenda at all?
Yes.
She's dialed in right now laughing at us.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was definitely a tougher year. You know, and I would like to thank department heads as well. You know, if you look at our departments, we had the rec department had significant savings, and the DPW had significant savings. That really helped. We wouldn't have been able to get there without their cooperation and you know, their belt tightening, which, you know, they kind of we asked them to, but it's not like they didn't do it. We had to push them. They really did. You know, did it on their own and figured out what works best for the department. So we appreciate everyone's work and obviously my colleagues as well. So seriously, we now of course have a public hearing scheduled to hear the public things that's been published now. But we've got any comments yet? But I'm sure no one's paying attention yet. So
Yeah, we'll put out, we just posted it on the website, but we'll put out an email that'll reach a little further, and I'm sure you'll be predisposed to write about it as part of your newsletter. So.
yes. As someone pointed out, it was Larry Levy, the department heads will not be happy with us, but hopefully the residents will. But sort of, I think that they'll be more neutral.
And not to go unnoticed, there is and not to rain on your parade there, but there is a 5% water rate increase that was included in this. Wasn't covered as part of the general fund budget, but we obviously covered that during our workshops, but that's also included in this budget.
Which is again kind of unfortunate rate of inflation right now. So.
Very much, yeah.
Thank you.
So, for people who are listening and for anyone who may reach out to us informally, it's reasonable for us to state that if you live in a home that had no additional work done, that they could expect their taxes to be increased about 4.5%.
Yeah, and we'll quantify that in our communications to make sure it's clear.
Yeah, it looks like a nice 1.6% tax decrease. But
Yeah.
But we can show them that number first.
Right, and also at the same time, it's consistent and inside the New York State tax cap, which is a 2% tax levy cap. So all of this is very confusing. You know what I mean? It's nothing straightforward about it.
I mean, this is the second budget I've worked on, and obviously this one was much more difficult than last year. But I think that's, Larry, what I was about to say was something you alluded to, which is we made the decision that we wanted to stay within the tax cap. That was something that we made the decision. And we have these increases, as you can see, things that are out of the board's control, you know, salaries and health insurance. These are prescribed from outside, and we don't control what we pay utilities and things like that. So in order, it's simple math, that in order to stay within 2% tax cap and pay for these increases, there needs to be cuts in the budget, and that's unfortunate. But we did sit down and really talk about what is the most equitable way to do that, and try and spread the pain, so to speak, and maintain as many programs as we can for people, and pay bang for the buck. So I echo Brian. Thank you to the department heads for being so responsible with their requests and their explanations as to why they did what they did, because that was very important in the process as well. But yeah, just my message would be that this was, there were no easy answers here. There was no simple answers here. And, we're happy with this, and we're interested to hear what the public thinks and see how it goes.
there's no motions or anything paper. It's just posted and
You already set the public hearing, so you're all set.
Thanks, Kitty, and thanks, Larry.
Thank you, guys.
Next up is award purchase contract 2023-01 for Hearst Equipment for the Irvington Fire Department.
Pretty straightforward. This is a purchase of equipment that had been previously approved as part of a capital project. When it came time to purchase the equipment, frankly, it was not on any state contract or national contract that we could find, and we searched extensively. Our preference is to purchase off of a previously bid out contract if we can. And this particular line was not. So we did go and do a formal bid. Bids came in as you see here. They're actually almost exactly in line with what we expected. We had gotten proposals from these companies prior to this before we thought we had to go out to bid. And when they did ultimately bid, they bid the same price as their proposals. So it was really,
It's kind of good.
yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a a process that we had to go through. We didn't have a choice. So, anyway, it's within the capital budget that was approved.
Two bids were received on March 8th, 2023 for Hearst equipment for the Irvington Fire Department as follows. State Line Fire and Safety from Park Ridge, New Jersey, $48,197.50. Municipal Emergency Services Inc. from Sandy Hook, Connecticut for $54,089.26. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bid submitted and determined that the lowest bidder is in order, responsive to specifications, now therefore being resolved to award it. Purchase contract 2023-01 for the Hearst equipment for the Irvington Fire Department in the amount of $48,197.50. The State Line Fire and Safety Inc. and authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. Make a motion, if I can have a second. Second. All in favor? Next up is approval of Labor Council retainer agreement.
So our existing Labor Council, their retainer expired at the end of February. What we had been doing historically is we've been engaging with them for a fixed price retainer that would cover the negotiation of both our CSEA contract and our PBA contract. But because of the amount of uncertainty of how and when our CSEA contract, which is the only one that's up at this point, how that's going to get negotiated, whether it'll be a quick and easy process or a long and drawn out process. Last time we negotiated was actually pretty quick and easy on a handshake, essentially, right in the middle of COVID, if you recall that. Or it could be long and drawn out. So to put a fixed price number on it really was kind of difficult to do. So this retainer and the PBA is not up for negotiation. It expires in about 2.5 years, but both the PBA and the village have a right to renegotiate the agreed upon rate if either one of us decides to do so by the end of this year. So, but it's specific to only a renegotiation of the rate and no other term in the contract. And that was done, as you may recall, when that contract was settled, right in the middle of the popularity of the word transitory was going around in terms of inflation. People didn't know what was happening at the time. So we both agreed, let's both have a mutual option to renegotiate. So I don't know what's going to happen by the end of this year. So with all that uncertainty, the retainer agreement that you have here is really a time and materials retainer. It'll be, there is no maximum as any retainer agreement would have with an attorney, but it's up to me to manage that, of course. But the retainer is consistent in terms of hourly rates that we were paying previous to this. And that's it.
Any questions on this? Resolved to renew the retainer agreement with the firm of Bond, Slotnick and King. Shattuck. Shattuck and King for the Labor Council services effective March 1st, 2023, and authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. Make a motion, if I can have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next is reports of board standing committees and officers, trustee liaison reports. You, Larry?
Sure, I've got a short update from the building department. They completed the annual state report and submitted to the New York Department of State. Building inspector and 2 assistant building inspectors have completed the required continuing education for 2023. And lastly, they survived Sarah being on vacation for a week. That's it.
Doc.
From my rectum report, I'll defer to the rec superintendent. Looks like he's ready to make a toast.
So I'm very happy to be here, and I want you to take one,
Show and tell.
please. Take one. Whoever's short straw has to put in extra hours at the rec to make Take one.
Okay.
It's better than listening to Dr. Longby read 50 of my messages.
There you go. Thank you.
You can take one to Mary. You get one too, because you're the only one who's worried about this thing. So,
I'm glad you brought this before you did about the cuts.
well, my email will cover that. Over 100 Irvington students tapped 40 gallons of sap from sugar maples in the Irvington woods. They created 1 gallon of real maple syrup. And your opportunity tonight is to taste that. I'll collect your straws when everybody's done.
Thank you.
We had this at the science fair on Saturday, the high school, and it was the longest line in the place. This is good.
Okay, Brian.
I gotta go.
Do we get any money back?
You grab the spoon.
I'm like,
Very good.
Wow.
Just 4 trees worth.
It's amazing, 40 gallons to get one.
That's kind of, how long does it take to make?
Well, the Girl Scouts, who were a big part of this, purchased I forget the name, the machine
Like an
that processes
An
it to
evaporator or
make it
something, yeah.
into the maple syrup. And they paid the cost, and the kids are coring trees up there. They're doing everything, so.
Remember Mark made it one year? Mark Miller?
Yes.
But Joe, is it a long process, like to get from that 40 gallons to one, is it like 5 days or something, or?
Well, once he starts boiling it, it's a whole day.
Wow.
So he has to stay there the whole day while the machine is running.
I feel like you're doing some kind of DNA test now.
the words out of my mouth. I'm like, are you gonna come and board and change the budget?
So I did want to share that. I'm very proud of CJ and what goes on up there. The science fair, I'd never gone to it, and I went because we were there. It was amazing what the kids had done, and then to see the whole far corner, they dedicated 4 tables just to us. And he showed the results of the tree coring that they're doing and the maple stuff. So, years ago, we said it would take us getting involved with the school district to be the end result for how the Nature Center in the Woods could survive. Well, we're on our way with that, so. The other announcement I would like to make is at the Oktoberfest meeting tonight, we made the decision, and it was unanimous, that we will be honoring Brian Smith at this year's event. Well,
Sure is unanimous.
there'd be no Oktoberfest or face without Brian Smith. And in fact, we reminisced today about the secret meeting we called the night you wanted to tell us your idea about creating the FACE committee. And as Maria Kashkin said, it was in that back room with all the dark paneling down at the senior center. So we think it's well-deserved, and we're looking forward to paying tribute to you and all you've done for everybody.
Does that mean he gets to pick some bands, to make sure he likes it?
If I had heard about the fireworks before I came here, I might not have pushed to make that announcement. And just one thing on the budget. It's painful, obviously, as a department head, I'm disappointed, but the real reason we can't complain is I remember standing here last year, and Larry and Brenda at the time, they made it clear to all of us this was going to be a really rough year. There was no punches pulled. This is what it is this year. It's not going to be that next year. So it wasn't a surprise. It doesn't mean it was easy, but there was no surprise. We all knew this was coming. So I know it's hard for all of you to have to make cuts too. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
So I guess that was your word last time. Hope you bring sweets every time.
Nothing else to say.
How are you gonna top that, Mitchell?
What do you got? What do you got? Yeah, the school board is definitely gonna be interesting.
So, the superintendent is doing, chats with the community coffees with Chris. It's gonna be April 14th and May 9th, and you have to reserve a spot a week in advance. So go to the website and do that if you're interested. They're at 5 o'clock. So the other thing is that it's that time of year for people they're interested in running for the Board of Education. You can get applications. There's 3 spots available in that election, and kindergarten registration is now online. I saw these 3 items. I was like, wow,
show is not happening when the stone is delivered. But you know, we were working with DPW, and I forget who else was there. I forget who was there, but all of you know, the pouring of the foundation and all of that's going to happen in April, which is going to be very exciting, and then the installation, and there's going to be a really big celebration planned. So June 3rd and 11th.
And then stay for performance concerts.
That's right.
Actually, yeah, we wanted to coordinate that to make sure when there's going to be music up at the Main Street School, so it didn't overlap.
Yeah.
We'll be loading in during the ceremony, but the music's not supposed to start until 1. So, yeah, so
It might be, there shouldn't be much overlap.
right.
Because I don't think I think it's going to start fairly on time. 2 hours is probably.
Village administrators report.
So just a real brief heads up that there's been for a few years now, a countywide effort to study the consolidation of the sewer districts around the entire county. And while that doesn't sound all that exciting, which it isn't, it's something that I think we're all going to need to pay attention to, especially on this side of the county. I think there's, let's just say that there's a big difference between the way sewer systems operate in some areas of the county versus others, and a consolidation would, you know, lead to a real imbalance between who's paying for what and what's being fixed, and you know, it's going to create I don't know that it'll ever get done because of that, but I think that we should be paying attention to it. So it's one of the items that will be on the village officials committee agenda on next Thursday, which is where the mayors get together and talk about topics of interest, and that'll be on there. So see what happens. More to come, obviously. Just giving you a heads up.
And as a matter of saying, the Sunnyside project is going to be Sunnyside Con Ed project. It's basically a few months behind now.
Oh, easily. It'll be, yeah, it'll be into the summer for sure.
Yeah.
How far into the summer, I'm not sure yet, but
Just wanted to bring that up to me.
they've hit a significant amount of rock, and it's slowed down their operations. So, yeah, I know. Well, and by the way, where did they hit the rock? Right next to Quarry Lane. I mean, there has to be a reason for that, right? So, that's what's happened. So,
We shouldn't have named it that.
it wasn't us. It was Greenberg or Tarrytown.
People I know today about that.
Do we know anything about paving on Harriman Road?
Yeah, so the last I heard, and I think they're going to stick to it, 3rd week of April for paving of Harriman Road. So we'll put some announcements out as it goes, and I have had 1 or 2 people ask me, but yeah, that road's in pretty rough shape. So,
Village clerk treasurer's report.
Just happy we have a tentative budget.
for sure.
Congratulations, your first one.
First one, yes.
Yeah, it was nothing.
Village attorney's report. Public comment, Carlos. Action items, Larry.
So 2 items. One is the question on the fence with
David.
Building Department, David Rubin, and the second is I just made a note for myself that there are still potentially some records for the Villa Lawero application that were submitted previously that may still be relevant. I didn't do a 1-for-1 comparison on that, so I'll try to nail that down and get you whatever it is that they think is still relevant. I
I think she's just talking about the stuff about what the foundation does.
maybe that's all it is, but I'll follow up with them.
Larry, you know, I have a